Good evening, folks. Welcome to this edition of Long Night's Journey in Today. My name is Pat Burden, and I am your host this evening, along with my co-host here, Leslie Smith, who just told me to keep my hands away from my face, so I'm going to try to do that as much as I can. And our guest tonight is Joel Kissick. Joel Kissick.
That's right.
And Joel was on with us last week, and he's continuing to be with us. And we're going to get into some further discussion. Joel shared his testimony the last time he was on. And this time I've asked Joel and Leslie to speak a little bit to the journey of being a Christian and practicing law, and what sort of obstacles, what sort of struggles, ethical struggles maybe, or situations that they've encountered in their profession where their faith has taken them through and into a position where they have peace. They're at peace with the decisions that they've made. So, Joel, since you are our guest, we'd like to start with you, and I'd like to ask you that question. Where have you, if you have, where have you found the most challenging situations, maybe ethically or otherwise, as a believer in your law practice? How has Jesus guided you through those situations? Maybe one or two, or whatever comes to mind.
I'll start by saying one of the first things that occurred to me after I was saved was I get paid to argue. I get paid to disagree with people. How can I be it's a baby Christian question, but
Yeah.
how do I do my job in a way that honors Jesus Christ? And I was sharing that with a friend of mine who's known the Lord for many years, and he said, just because you have to disagree and debate and argue, negotiate, pick a word, it doesn't mean you have to do it without respecting the person that you're speaking with. And that profound and simple insight has, there are many parts to working through the problems, but, the idea that loving others and loving your enemies and treating all with respect and being open to reason, these are things that as a lawyer, you should be, if you're doing your job correctly, doing anyway.
Yes.
In the sense that, a soft word breaks a bone. So, treating people with respect. And when I have found, you ask, where's the problem? Where's the tension that exists between being a follower of Jesus and being a lawyer? I'd say, generally speaking, I have experienced actually not a tension so much as a guidance. And so, for example, the way that the Lord, there's a book written by a guy named Ken Sande called The Peacemaker, but basically the idea of, you look at conflict and say, where's the glory of God in this? That question has an answer. And so you negotiate, you debate, you disagree in a way that honors the Lord. And yes, that does mean respect. It doesn't mean not defending, not advocating for the person you're trying to help, for my client.
Right.
But it certainly does mean the way you do it makes a huge difference. And I've done so many of these, by which I mean I've done so many of corporate divorces. Two partners have been together for 10 years, and suddenly one of them wants to go this way and the other one wants to go that way. It's a lot. It's like any relationship, especially a human relationship, because business is really, it's about human beings.
Yes.
Really,
Yes.
ultimately, it's about human beings. And some of them manage it well, and some of them manage it very poorly. And for several years, it looked like all I was doing was getting involved in one horrific mess after another. And you steer people through the shoals. Most of it has not to do with, I just thought of a great idea that nobody's thought of. It's the way you present, the way that you act in a way that reflects, the question of what would the Lord want me to do? How would He want me to respond to this? These kinds of things I have found they help me and they help me be very effective at interpersonally charged situations like that. You have the certainty of what's the right thing to do. And you see it bear fruit again and again, and clients say, boy, you really did that well. And I'll give you an example. One night I had a client, and she was president of her company, and I could see that she was deeply disturbed by something. Believe it or not, I'm actually trying to answer your question.
Oh, you are. You are, and I knew this was going to be a good one.
That's right.
Okay, so because it feeds into that, okay, how do you be a lawyer and be a Christian? Oh, this is a
Yes,
great
yes,
example.
yes,
And this is
it's
only
good.
one. You
Yeah.
see, it's deliciously complex. The ability, anyway, sorry. So, I could see that there's something really bothering her. I say, okay, tell you what, let's put the law stuff aside. What's wrong?
Yeah.
One human being to another, what's going on? So, deep problems in her marriage. I said, okay. So we spend about an hour listening to those questions, and
yeah.
then basically talking to her about Ephesians 5. Saying, I'm not saying, here's what Ephesians 5 says, because not a believer.
Not.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, not. But try this. I think this is what your husband is looking for. Try speaking this way. Try asking these questions. Try looking for these things, and so on and so forth. Next morning, she calls me. She's, they talk about breathless with excitement. Yeah, that would be a good description for this person. She's incapable of forming complete words. It's coming out so fast. She's so excited. She said, I've just had the most exciting conversation I've had with my husband in 10 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yes.
Like
Yeah,
that, right?
So if the law thing doesn't work out, you could just go into marriage counseling. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, here. And my book will be available. No, just kidding. In the lobby after the show. Anyway, not at all. But so she comes to my office and, unpacks this.
Yes.
How this had gone and so on. And oh my goodness, such a great illumination. I'm so grateful. I said, that's not my wisdom. Would you like to meet the person who wrote that wisdom? Yes. Okay, great. It's from the Bible. These are the words of the living God.
And she said?
And she said, deflector shields to maximum.
Yeah.
I guess, no, thank you. And I said,
Okay.
fair enough. But I'd encourage you to reflect on where you were 10 seconds ago or 2 hours ago and where we are now.
Yes.
Because believe me when I say that's the beginning, that's the smallest part of his ability to work in your life. Anyway, so there's an example
That
of...
is great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not all the time, but you have lots and lots of examples when you're talking to human beings. And that's one thing, going back to our conversation about Bay Street, when you're talking to a $10 billion corporation, right?
Yes.
They're interested in an output. I'm paying you dollars to give me this output. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Go down further into smaller businesses, entrepreneurial businesses, businesses run by the owners and so on,
Yeah.
where you have more of an opportunity to actually speak
Yes.
and give counsel, which is way more satisfying.
Yeah.
I mean, no disrespect, this is my view. Be an output is one thing, to actually help people.
Yeah.
And help people. Here, let's take the wisdom of the Almighty and apply it to this, because your questions have answers. So let's talk about them. Some clients, you can pray with as well. Not always, but that's an example. And I could go on, and I probably will, knowing me. But you could go on and talk about how there's not so. I don't find so much tension in being a corporate lawyer and helping charities, especially religious charities, set up, get organized, solve problems, but also, like this person was, this is a secular business.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I can't take everything the Lord's given me and apply it there.
Do you see a difference between the charity as a client and a secular company?
Yeah, if you allow me to refine the question and focus particularly on a Christian church as a charity. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And one of the things that when you're talking to a body of believers, a board of elders and something, to say, and to have them know, what we're all interested in, including me, is I understand what's most important to you. It's most important to me as well. The question isn't, how do we minimize liability, or how do we do this corporate stuff and so on. Yeah, yep. The question is, how do we do this in a way that honors the Lord? And I remember the first time I ever prayed with opposing counsel. He was a Christian.
Wow.
And he was on, two partners, same sort of
Yes,
story.
yes.
They're separating, and it was cranky. People were cranky.
Yeah.
And we prayed for our clients. We prayed for each other. We prayed for the resolution of the process, and say, there he is. That's how he would want this
That's
done.
awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So, and so when you're speaking to Christian clients, I mean, the primacy of Jesus Christ is a lot more front and center. And you're intentionally focusing the answer to the question on that goal, which is not the same goal as a secular business
Yeah.
might have.
Yeah, of course.
And to have, that's a great source of professional satisfaction. You know what it's like when the client knows you understand what's important to them. Yeah, that's a great thing when you're helping Christians to know that they know you love Jesus Christ as well and would do nothing to dishonor him. So,
Amen.
Yeah, that's a great. Do you find, Les, that you have a tension between being a Christian and being a lawyer? In what you do?
Yeah, when I'm not behaving well, sure. Yeah, like when I'm getting impatient on the bench. As a small claims court judge, I sometimes get impatient with people. And
Not you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Judge Judy.
That's a personal thing, as opposed to the nature of being a judge is in itself not antithetical to serving Christ.
No, the whole small claims court setup came right out of the Bible. So God is all about justice. I mean,
Yes.
the whole law thing came right out of, it's near and dear to his heart, right? Justice, advocating on behalf of those who can't advocate.
Amen. Yep.
But no, I don't. You know what? Because I practice alone. So I share space with another lawyer, but I am a sole practitioner, and I did that quite deliberately. Initially, not because I was a believer, but now I see the value in it because I can control my time and I don't have to live up to billing expectations of somebody else. And I can take cases or not take them. And just as an example, in the last year or so, I've talked 2 people out of suing their employers because they were harassed at the workplace. And one of them had PTSD, and she was away on a stress leave for 2 years. And of course, the limitation period was about to expire. And I brought her back in, and I said, okay, look, yes, you probably be successful, and you may end up getting $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever it was. But I said, but in the process of doing that, you're going to have to sit in a room across the table from your aggressor during examinations for discovery. You're going to read things in the statement of defense you're not going to like. They're going to trash your character. And I said, to be honest with you, I think this has the potential of taking the strides that you've made through the therapy that you've taken backwards. And I said, if it were me, I wouldn't bother. I'd walk. And she said, you know what, I really appreciate that. I really didn't want to go forward with it. So clients sometimes will think that I want them to go forward with it because I am a litigator. But a lot of times now, where before I was saved, I would have just said, just give me the facts, stop the belly aching. Well, I didn't actually say that, but that was what was going on in my head. Right. But now I'm now more of a counselor, so I'm a lawyer and counselor. So I'm actually counseling people because God gives me a lot of discernment when I talk to people. I can just tell that this, irrespective of how strong their case might be, this might not be the right thing for that person to do overall. Like it might not be healthy mentally because I do a lot of harassment work, a lot of people come to me and they're really mentally messed up. And I just say, go take a really long stress leave. And when you're near the end, we'll have another conversation. And then we'll figure out what the strategy is.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've counseled people not to go back to companies, but also not to pursue any damages. And it's so interesting because a lot of them will say, geez, I feel really good because I didn't really want to do that, but I thought maybe you wanted me to do that. So I have, and so talking people out of litigation is not a way to a partnership. Right? I can't be in a firm because I'm not prepared to do what's necessary to meet the billing requirements. Because I have to tell you that I know there are some opposing counsel that I deal with who are just running things up the flagpole and not getting things settled because they have billing requirements they have to meet.
Yeah.
So I don't have that. I do what's right for the client, not what's right for my pocketbook.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That Jesus talked a lot about you cannot serve two masters.
Yeah.
There's the master of mammon,
Yeah, exactly.
and there's the master of the Lord and the kingdom of God. And I think what is really honorable for you guys as believers in your profession is that your thought and your thinking process is what is in the best interest of this person, as opposed to what is in my best interest in this situation, and how can I squeeze as much client service, income out of this deal. And I think that's awesome. I think that's what to some degree makes you stand out among others as believers in this profession.
Yeah, and for me too, I don't, I will not hide the ugly truth of whatever. If somebody comes to me and I know that they've done something at the workplace that has caused them to be fired,
Yeah.
I will face them with it. I will say, look, you really can't talk to your boss like that because this is just not going to go well for you. And so
Yeah.
I feel that God, there's such a lack of honesty and there's a lack of accountability anymore with people.
Yeah.
And I just think that part of my job is to speak truth into people. And sometimes the truth is, you know what, you're offside here. And
That's
then,
right.
next time you just need to not do that because people do come in with these odd ideas about what's appropriate in the workplace. And so I speak the truth over them. I do it with love, but I do have to be the bearer of bad news sometimes.
Yeah.
But if I didn't do that, and if I just said, if I was just like pretending to be an order taker at McDonald's and just doing whatever they wanted, what would end up happening is they'd spend a whole lot of money with me and get nowhere, and then my reputation would be trashed.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
it isn't my reputation that matters so much, but it does, because if my reputation before the bench is, oh, here she is again. Here she is with another trumped up lawsuit. If my reputation is not good before the bench, that affects the outcome of my client's matter. So I am a peacemaker, not just a peacekeeper. I deliberately set out to try to make peace. However, if it's not possible, watch out, because I'm a dog with a bone, and I won't let go until I get the result that I know is supposed to happen. Fair warning.
Amen.
Yeah.
The idea of speaking truth to clients, actually also culturally, to me that honors Christ, right? You can honor just by saying, I'm not going to serve me, I'm going to serve you.
Right.
Second, I'm going to speak to you in a way that probably in the culture that you exist in, where for the last couple of 100 years, it's been about me. Mm-hmm. Didn't you know that, by the way? It's about me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And you say, how about responsibilities? Not just rights, but responsibilities. Your character is what we're after here.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you cannot speak that way and expect no consequences to it.
Yeah. Well, Jesus was constantly giving truth to the Pharisees.
Yes.
And he didn't shy away from that.
No.
No.
He was on their case all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
he
I think
didn't
that
blow sunshine into dark places. You know, he was right out there with it.
Yes.
And that's what they needed, because
that's right.
it's interesting in the book of Acts. I think somewhere around the second or third chapter of Acts, it says, and many of the priests became believers.
Oh, interesting.
So they
Yeah.
needed that hard
Yeah,
word
That's right.
to bring them to a realization that they too needed help.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it was a message they didn't want to hear, but
Yeah.
irrespective of that, Jesus delivered it anyway.
You talked about being really busy, you know, and I agree with you. One of the wonderful things about not working in a larger firm is you can say,
Yeah.
I'm going to do, for example, this.
Yeah,
That means I'm not at work at my desk pumping out the hours,
that's
right?
right. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm going to do this because in this way I serve the Lord.
yeah.
The freedom to do that, I ran it by our executive committee and they said, okay. You know, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
That freedom,
Yeah, you can't buy that.
no.
That's right.
You cannot buy that.
And it also, it's like anything, the time, you know, the downtown, it's every hour.
It's
every minute.
relentless.
Yes, it is.
And I figured out a long time ago that I didn't have the physical stamina to do that job. I didn't have the physical stamina to go on the train and on the subway every day and back and forth and the noise and then 10 hours at the office and then, like, I long ago figured out, where's the glory in all of this? I'm the only one here,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And one of the things when I was saved, because I was saved, I think when I was in my early 40s, like you. And one of the things the Lord did for me that first summer was separate me from my unbelieving partner. He unyoked us.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, my income dropped in half. And I had hardly any work to do that summer, but I got a rest. I got the rest that I didn't even know that kind of rest was possible.
Oh,
Like I had a
Lord.
I was mentally like insane practically with all of the, a single mother of 3 little kids and running a practice and I was just so tired. I was so mentally tired.
Yeah. That's
And then
huge.
and then that first summer I was saved, I was just, I had hardly any work and I didn't even care. And I spent a lot of time in the backyard and all the bills got paid anyway, somehow.
Yeah.
And I just got rest, the way that Jesus intends for us to rest in Him. It was amazing. And then I realized, I don't need to work this hard. So I'm not setting the legal world on fire. Nobody knows about me except a few people in Oakville. I mean, I'm being facetious, but you won't read my name in the top 40 under 40, or top 60 over 60, whatever. I mean, you won't read my name anywhere. And actually, I don't want that. I don't want it. Because I know the Lord knows what I do. That's enough for me.
Yeah. Amen.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And the longer you know Him and the more you love Him, the less important that stuff becomes.
Totally.
That's right.
Yeah, it's totally not important.
And it's not like, I think I'll stop being a good lawyer now and just sort of, no, better lawyer,
Oh yeah.
better lawyer.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot. The way the Lord works with my mind is that I am so good at seeing immediately what the issues are and what they're not. I can just cut through all of the noise and get right down to it. And it's like, okay, we're dealing with this, we're not doing that. We're going to do this, but not that. And I think that part of that is because I've been on the bench for 16 years too. And so you really learn, because you have a room full of people and you've got like 25 or 30 matters on the list that day, and you got to learn to deal with it quick.
Cut to the chase.
Cut right to the chase. Like the other day, I was in small claims, and some paralegal was trying to conduct I think I don't know if he was cross-examining or what he was doing, but he thought it would be a good idea to talk about punitive damages for his client's claim. And I'm just getting really frustrated, and I just couldn't get the words out fast enough. I said, "Stop! We're not doing that. Move on." And it's like, I'm sorry. I felt really bad about that, but I just couldn't get it out fast enough. I thought, no, we're not doing that. Just forget the punitive damages. Stick to take the clean shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Take the clean shot. Anyway, it's just like...
Here's my 57th argument I'd like you to try.
Yeah. It's like,
yes, I get
it's just the way God has really speaks to me, and so I can zero in on what's really, really important, and just skip all the rest. And it's like the purveyor of clarity in a confused world. And that's what God has me doing, because these people come in and their minds are in a complete mess, and if they're emotionally distraught, that's a whole other issue. And I just bring peace and calm and clarity, and we're just going to simplify this. And I think people are desperate for simplicity.
Yeah.
The world is so upon us, right?
Yes,
Don't you find?
yes.
And I just think that the more we can clarify and bring simplicity to the situation, that's a service. I feel that. Don't you find that?
Oh, very much. Well said. One of the things that I particularly enjoy doing is sitting with pastors and explaining, let me tell you what's going on in about 7 different areas of the law, and just distill it down as to, this is a sideshow. This is, don't worry about this. Don't worry about, right? And
this is a gong show. That's a sideshow.
Yeah. Yes. I
This is a freak show.
It would be very easy if you looked at what seems to attract attention to conclude that, oh my goodness me, everybody hates Christians, for example. So whoa.
That's what the media wants you to believe.
Yeah.
That's not exactly true.
No, and the developments in law as it relates to human sexuality, the developments in law as it relates to medical assistance in dying, as it relates, even in our profession, where, you may know this, but until recently, last few years, our regulator required, as part of renewing our license, and a positive affirmation that we promote a bunch of vaguely defined terms, most of which sit inside our faith very easily, some of which don't sit inside our faith very easily.
Yeah.
And one thing about a lawyer is, when you see an ambiguous term, you say, we have to clarify what we mean here.
Yeah.
Then I can say yes or no. And the answer was they wouldn't. And so it was a big consternation. It was called the Statement of Principles. And just a few weeks ago, that requirement was removed.
Well,
Okay.
you should. I'll explain what happened. There was a big hue and cry from some lawyers, and they developed a group of lawyers who were wanting. These were the benchers that. So there was a SOP, Statement of Principles, and there was a group of lawyers who wanted to run as benchers, basically board of director members for the Law Society, and they formed a group. And then they advertised themselves, and they got the word out. And so all 22 of those candidates were elected to the Board of Governors, or the benchers. And then they had a great debate. And this was this year. So a slate of 22 out of 44, I believe there's 44 benchers across the province. And 22 of them were SOP candidates. They were determined to get rid of it. And it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. And God, His purposes are going to prevail, regardless of the machinations and the gyrations that we go through. I truly believe that was of God, because we were being asked to take a position on things when really we shouldn't be taking a position on anything. And me as a judge definitely should not be taking a position on anything, because I can look biased.
Yeah.
Right? So that was just a real victory. That was a real victory.
Yep. You said a couple of really great things there. The first is the idea that, hey, the Lord is sovereign in all of this. It's not like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Which is, with the law, which to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is a lot of the things that Christians might hold dear.
Yes.
Are generally not the way that society views things, and so what should be our response? And there's the great thing about that is there are many responses that honor the Lord in that, and one of them that I was reading, talking a little earlier about that book, and how do you respond inside the culture generally, not lawyers, but generally, how does a Christian respond to what's going on in the culture? And one of them is to recognize that as human beings try to find meaning and purpose in themselves, and you do it unconsciously, is, for those whom the Lord has drawn to himself and opened their eyes, you realize this goes nowhere. And lots of people won't, but lots of people are in situations of great despondency and despair. For example, I have a friend who is, when police have suicide jumpers, they'll bring in us. Okay, so he's one of those guys that they call when this is happening to talk the person off the ledge.
Yeah.
Happens to be a follower of Jesus as well. And so, they don't really just keep him off the ledge kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, back in the building. And so he speaks quite openly about, because people will in those situations and everything short of that, I've lost hope.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
Let me speak. So for us as followers, we're speaking into a world where, some people are further along this than others.
Yeah.
Doesn't have that. And we've got such a fantastic message
Yeah.
of hope and love,
Yeah.
and God's love for you. And let me prove that to you. Let me tell you about the crucifixion of his son, and so on.
Yeah.
That really, in all the midst of this maelstrom, it's in the last couple of centuries, there hasn't been as good a time as right now to speak into culture, because it is so incredibly opposite.
Right.
Of
Yeah.
it. And so and lawyers can do that, as we've been talking about.
We have influence, actually.
Yes.
And
yes.
we need to harness it and use it properly. Yeah.
So let me, if I may, I'd like to ask a question and then state a scenario that a friend of mine went through recently as a music director in a church. But let me start with the question. I have heard from some other colleagues in ministry that within a year and a half, pastors, churches are going to have to submit their constitutions to some branch of the government. And that if those constitutions violate human rights issues in any way, shape, or form, then that church may be refused registration or well, let's just leave it at that. Are you aware of anything like this being spoken of within the legal framework?
Not, for me, no, not with any certainty.
Okay.
But certainly when we were dealing with the student funding issue last year, that was the end of the slippery slope argument. If we cave in and tick the box and say our programs don't frustrate anyone's right to get we don't teach that we're against abortion or whatever,
For example.
we're not going to get any student funding for the summer student program. And then the argument for not ticking that box was, if you agree that you're going to stay away from these issues in order to get funding, someday they're going to make you say, well, we're not going to allow you to have a charitable status. I have not had any experience with that being a reality, only a possibility.
Okay.
But only notionally. So I don't know, have you heard anything about that?
I think the way you started that is great, in the sense that first, I mean, the government and the student internships is a great example of, well, yeah. But you're asking a even bigger question, which is, hi, we're a Christian church and we hold to a particular interpretation of the Bible. Are we about to have our charitable status yanked? Answer, no. Thought one, it shouldn't upset us that people will look over our constitutions. They do that anyway as part of...
Yeah, part of the application process.
That's right, absolutely right. And
Yeah.
Religion is and has been, and in a moment I'll talk about where that is, but it has been for a very long time a recognized form of charity, and rightly so.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you pile on top of the good that faith has brought, of all stripes,
Right.
It's a mountain. Recently, the Senate had a committee that looked at the charitable sector. And its goal was developing insights to create a dynamic charitable sector and no holds barred, look at everything.
Yeah.
So, question, did they look at, well, oh my goodness, what if somebody has a certain view that isn't popular in culture these days on, you know, the sanctity of life, abortion, or transgenderism, and on and on.
Yeah,
all these
yes.
things that are hot points. Not touched. So I'd say within the last year, I've spoken with pastors who say, man, I think inside of 10 years, we won't even be charities anymore. They won't let us be charities. I said, possibly.
Yeah.
But right now, I mean, we're talking, there is nothing on the horizon that says that. No warning, no, hey, we thought, no bills, no nothing. We all have to comply with the Human Rights Code. There's an exception for religious bodies, you know.
Yeah.
And doing this is not a hard thing to do. So, I mean, to put it in 3 words, no,
Okay.
not yet.
All right.
And I don't, you know, possible, yes, just because of the culture we're in.
Sure.
But
I doubt it.
yeah, it's where I am.
I don't
just
think
say,
so.
yeah, guys, sleep well, and you know, keep getting out there.
But even if it does,
spread the gospel.
even if they decide to delist a church as a charity, that's nothing for God to deal with. It just means people will just not get a tax receipt. That's all.
Let's go to the book of
right.
Acts. What happened there? Oh my goodness, what do you know? It actually multiplied the church.
Exactly.
right.
Yes.
There
it's
wasn't
like-
any charitable status back then.
Yeah, nothing comes against the Almighty.
No,
Amen.
the hell does not prevail against the church. Right?
No.
Amen.
That's
So-
right.
So that may be just a bit of a hand-wringing.
Oh yeah, and that kind of stuff. Yes, this is one of the reasons when we like to get together with them to just say, ask me like that
Yes,
kind of question.
yes.
Say, no. Next question.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because, you know,
Yeah.
keep our ears to the ground to listen for that stuff.
But that's good to know, because I know a lot of pastors are concerned about some of the cultural issues that are really far removed from the Judeo-Christian consensus or base, you know, foundation. So
well, they just need to preach the word and then
Well,
let God deal with it.
that's right. Yeah.
You can't shy away from that.
Oh, there's no way we will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. It's
Yeah.
the best. I mean, would you like to go back to the first century and speak into that culture?
Right. Right.
It's like, yeah, it's a lot like that.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah, of
yeah.
course.
Look, one human being to another. I know what it's like. We had this. Our regulator was coming at us. Our ability to make a living if we don't do this.
Yeah.
You think, oh my goodness, really? Yeah, really.
Yeah,
And
they were
saying,
they were not going to renew our licenses unless we agreed with the statement of principles.
Wow.
and while they didn't say that, they said, well, no increasing discipline, which means year 1, we don't say that. Year 17, yeah, we definitely say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and you know, when you're talking to lawyers, stuff like that, and saying, no, we don't mean that, look, you're talking to the most cynical people in the world as a group.
Yeah.
They will always assume there's an agenda.
You know, I mean, when they had the debate at the Benchers meeting in June, it just went on for 9 hours, and they couldn't get anywhere with it, as you might expect. But at the end of the day, it was struck down. Now, they may come back with something a little more reasonable or a little less pointed, but it was struck down. I have every confidence that God's will and purposes will be fulfilled, and
Yeah.
it doesn't look the way Satan would like it to look.
Yes.
So,
Now, let me give you a scenario that a friend of mine just had to contend with as a music director in a church. So, and this is an evangelical church. So a new woman came into the congregation. And she did not profess faith, but she was certainly welcome, as anybody is welcome in any church, to hear the gospel. What ended up happening is this woman hit on my friend, who was another female and music director in the church. And she made it clear very quickly that she was not inclined in that direction, and that would she please stop these the posturing that she's been presenting to my friend. It turned out that this person then went to the pastor of the church and said, this music director is intolerant. She's accused me of things that I am not. And before you knew it, it was like there was a defamation thing going on between my friend and this woman, and the lady was blatantly coming on to her in a manner that she did not want or made any indication that, you know, she was of that ilk. So it got up to the point where they both lawyered up. And I'm wondering, like, is there an agenda in some sectors of our culture where the only way to really get into the church and try to cause havoc is to put people in,
Of course.
that,
Wolf in sheep's clothing.
yes, advance these issues. And
For sure.
what a way to break a church financially. You know, tie it up legally as much as you can. Because eventually the church gets involved. The church has to get involved. It's not just the two individuals any longer, but now...
Are you saying that somebody sued somebody?
I'm not quite sure if it got to that point, but that's where it was heading. So how does the church deal with this kind of issue where, I mean, even Jesus said the tare and the wheat will grow up together. And we know that probably in every church there's some wheat and there's some tares.
Sure. Oh yeah, for sure.
And when the tares manifest and start doing what they do, it can cause a lot of pain and a lot of heartache in the church.
Yeah. So the question of whether there are, and that's always been true.
Sheep.
You know, Satan
Wolves in sheep
opposes us.
clothing.
I mean, I know it sounds upside down, but I'd say take some encouragement. You're attracting attention from the evil one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Amen.
If you were ineffective at spreading the gospel, you wouldn't have this problem. It's a good,
Yes.
yeah, it's a problem.
Yes.
I mean,
It's a good
It
problem.
also needs to be
In
dealt
some
with
ways.
too, and I think
Yes.
some pastors are very reticent to deal with that. So I certainly know of situations where something like that has happened, and the pastor pulls the person in and says, "Listen, this is not in accordance with our tenets, and if you're going to be a member here, you're going to have to sign a statement of faith, and that's going to prohibit certain activities,
Yep.
and this is just the way it is." And making that declaration is not actually against the Human Rights Code, because the church is there to teach those tenets, right? And
Yes,
so there's an
yes.
exception to that. And then the person, and then you can never underestimate the power of prayer. To be praying for the church to protection against this sort of thing, and then to remove somebody.
Yeah.
Because God will remove somebody. I'll just discourage them from coming back to the church and so forth. So it doesn't have to be some kind of detonation in the church that it blows up. But you can't shy away from it.
No,
the
you
pastor
can't.
has to deal with that. Has to deal with people who are offside. He has to deal with he or she has to deal with believers who are offside or non-members who were
Yeah.
offside.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, you can't discipline a non-member.
No.
But so then prayer becomes so critical because God will remove people. Look what he did to Ananias and Sapphira.
Yes.
Pick them off, right?
Yep.
Pick them off.
Yeah.
But said a bunch of great things there. First, as it relates to that one, yeah, there is an answer. I've, and Leslie has as well, I'm sure, counseled churches that are facing situations like that. And
Yeah.
the worst, not the worst, but it's possible to respond. It's possible to respond intelligently without
Yes.
spending an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And have it, for example, in that case, we're going to have this independent investigator. We're going to get to
Yeah.
the bottom of the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lots of times, in one, I was involved in very big conspiracy to attack and bring down a Christian ministry. And we just brought in an independent investigator with specialists. And, oh, there's been child abuse? Great, we're bringing in a police officer who has special expertise in investigating. Like, load them up with experts and say,
Yes.
let's go find out what actually happened.
Yeah.
And the whole thing melted like that.
That's
And
great,
Out
yes.
comes the report that says, no. In fact, these are the bad guys, not the good guys. They're the bad guys. And sometimes it's that clear. But the point is, there's things that you can do in response to this that don't just say, we're going to be toast. But Leslie's spot on. You must respond, and
Yeah.
it can be done. And the second thing is that it's possible to prepare for that kind of stuff as well. So the
Yeah.
hardest thing is, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And
Yes.
Yeah, I had a case. I had a case like that one time where a pastor there was his youth pastor was having an inappropriate relationship with the janitor, who was a female, and he didn't know what to do, so he did nothing for a long time. And he called me up and he just said, I don't know what to do. I said, get into my office, we'll talk about it. And so I was retained to do an investigation.
Yeah.
And I did the investigation, and it was cool. I was retained to give legal advice and spiritual advice.
Yeah.
And so I did, within the body of my report. And I actually said that the youth pastor could be fired with cause because he'd done more than just cross the line. But,
Yes.
however, the pastor, they decided to apply reconciliation, or at least offer that. And the person decided not to take it up. So they gave him a very generous package, and they packaged him out. And I've just watched that church absolutely blossom because
Amen.
God separated out the wolf from the pack.
You dealt with the leaven.
They dealt with it,
Yeah.
and they were very Christ-like about it. I really learned a lot, actually,
Yes,
about
yes.
how to be Christ-like. I said, just, get rid of him.
Off with his head.
Well, yeah, kind of. Not in quite that language, but that was the point. I said, you guys could easily terminate him with
Yeah,
cause,
yeah.
and therefore without a package. But they said, okay, we know he has to go, but we want to show Christ likeness and give him an opportunity for counseling and all the rest
Yes.
of it. He didn't. He turned it away, and they gave him a generous package, and he signed a release, and off he went.
Off he went.
And now the church is it's just amazing.
Flourishing. Yeah, that's
Flourishing.
good.
And so what the uptake of that is that don't run from the storm, run into it, and
Yes.
and get the right lawyer. Like I love that investigation. I mean, it was cool to be able to provide report on
Amen.
the legal issues as well as the spiritual,
spiritual issues, yeah.
Not that I needed to tell a pastor what to do. I don't know. But that was the thing. And so
Listen, in the multitude of counselors, there's wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any pastor is going to welcome
yeah.
godly input
Yeah.
into a situation
Yeah.
to achieve and arrive at a
So that's-
godly decision.
So that's how I actually infuse what I do with my faith.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and I learned something too. I learned about being a little more compassionate with people. I can get kind of legal on things, but I learned a lot from that pastor as well, doing
Yeah.
that. So
Well, Leslie
Anyway,
and Joel,
time to
we've
wrap it
come
up.
to an end.
wow, that was quick.
And I
so many
want
other
to thank
stories.
you
I know.
for a robust discussion and your forthrightness about dealing with some issues in your profession
Yeah.
as believers. And I hope that it was beneficial to you. And if any pastors were listening, We, sometimes we hear things and we succumb to fear before we properly investigate what we need to investigate in order to arrive at a truthful conclusion.
Yeah.
So, fear not.
Exactly.
Fear not. God is on the throne, and nothing takes him by surprise. Nothing.
That's right.
He's got everything under control. And so thank you for being with us tonight on this edition. And thank you, Joel, for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leslie, for being here.
That's right.
And
Thank
the
you.
Lord bless you. And thank you for being with us on Long Night's Journey in Today.